Boeing is losing billions of dollars due to Trump's 25% tariff policy. This has led to a $300 million USD loss from canceled orders. Production output has dropped by 20%, while Airbus takes advantage of the opportunity to gain market share. However, Trump still insists it's not my fault. Since the Trump administration imposed a 25% tariff on all imported airplane parts, Boeing has found itself in a financial crisis. Major airlines like Ryanair, one of Boeing's biggest customers, have had to cancel or delay orders for 100 aircraft. This alone has cost Boeing at least $300 million US. Other airlines, including Turkish Airlines, have also pulled orders, adding further pressure on Boeing's revenue. The impact of these tariffs isn't just about losing customers, it's also about increased competition. Rivals like Airbus have seized this opportunity, increasing their revenue by 15% in the first quarter of 2025, according to IATA. Trump's tariff policy has inadvertently boosted the competitive edge of Boeing's rivals, causing Boeing to lose critical contracts. One of the most severe consequences Boeing is facing is the disruption of its global supply chain. Suppliers from countries like Canada, Germany, and Japan have been forced to halt deliveries of critical components such as landing gear, electronics, and other aviation parts. Parts Boeing cannot produce domestically. This not only complicates production, but also delays the fulfillment of contracts, particularly for models like the 737 MAX. In response to the shortage of parts, Boeing had to temporarily halt production of the 737 MAX, costing the company $100 million US in the next quarter. Boeing has been negotiating with suppliers from South Korea and Brazil to find replacements, but production levels have dropped by 20% in 2025, according to internal reports. This production halt has led to delivery delays, frustrating customers, and eroding trust. As Boeing struggles, Airbus and other competitors, particularly COMAC from China, have seized the opportunity to gain market share. Airlines such as Emirates and Air India, which previously planned to purchase aircraft from Boeing, have begun to consider switching large contracts to Airbus. This shift has helped Airbus boost its revenue by 15% in the first quarter of 2025, while Boeing has lost these critical deals. This shift not only impacts current orders, but also has long-term effects on Boeing's growth and competitiveness. Airbus quickly captured the market for mid-range and wide-body aircraft, while Boeing's inability to maintain its production pace due to supply chain disruptions and tariffs has hindered its ability to keep up. Each canceled order cost Boeing anywhere from $3 million to $300 million US, depending on the type and size of the order. If the tariffs persist, Boeing could lose hundreds of millions of dollars. The company projects that 10% of its revenue, around $10 billion USD annually, could be lost if the situation continues. Not only does this financial strain affect Boeing, but it's also taking a toll on its workforce. In Texas, Boeing has laid off 500 workers, and the company forecasts it will need to cut another 1,000 jobs if the supply chain issues are not resolved. These layoffs primarily impact engineers and workers at component manufacturing plants, creating significant economic disruption in these regions. While Boeing has called on the U.S. government to intervene and lift the tariffs on civilian aviation, Trump remains firm in defending his tariff policy, arguing that it's necessary to protect domestic manufacturing and create jobs for Americans. However, in reality, Boeing is losing market share up to 25% this year to Airbus, putting the company's global standing in jeopardy. Experts predict that if tariffs continue, Boeing could lose an additional 5% market share by 2026, and the U.S. aviation industry could lose $1 billion over the next 2 years. While Trump's policies are aimed at protecting American manufacturing, they are actually reducing competition and pushing Boeing into an even more difficult position.
We're talking about 800 horsepower and 1,250 Newton meters from one e-motor.
With just one unexpected announcement, Koenigsegg nearly brings Elon Musk to his knees on live broadcast. A motor the size of a suitcase, yet more powerful than Tesla's entire system. Could this mark the end of the pure electric era? The surprise strike. Koenigsegg moves, Elon stunned on camera. In 2025, as the auto industry obsesses over battery range and smart software, Koenigsegg, a boutique automaker with just a few hundred employees, unleashed two unexpected weapons. An electric motor weighing under 40 kilograms, producing 800 horsepower, and a quad-turbo engine running on e-fuel, packing 1,500 horsepower. Clean, compact, and incredibly versatile. With a quiet update, Koenigsegg dropped a technical bomb right at the heart of the EV ecosystem. And the reaction? Almost immediately, Elon Musk appeared in an internal live-streamed meeting. Gone was the confident CEO with legs crossed, speaking about Mars and AI. In his place stood a subdued Elon, tired eyes, dodging questions about high-performance motor architecture. Pure EVs. Is tech making the green dream obese? Electric cars were once a symbol of a clean future, but the deeper we go, the more contradictions emerge. EVs are getting heavier because the batteries are getting bigger. An electric sedan can now weigh more than a traditional SUV. This doesn't just waste energy. It wears down roads, tires, and brake systems. Then there are the raw materials. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, sourced from controversial mines with serious environmental and ethical concerns. And the driving feel? Smooth, but soulless. No roar, no gear shifts, no vibrations. As some have said, driving an EV feels like piloting a moving iPad. Meanwhile, every brand from Rimac to Porsche to Lucid is chasing the same formula. Bigger batteries, bigger screens, but fewer emotions. Koenigsegg breaks the mold. Smaller, stronger, cleaner, dark matter. Motor, a power density. Breakthrough. About the size of a backpack, this motor generates 800 horsepower and 1,250 newton-meters of torque. A figure Tesla needs two bulky motors to match. No complex cooling, no software-based torque splitting, just a compact 38-kilogram mechanical block. The six-phase Raxioflex design, blending radial and axial flow, enables smoother power delivery, fast cooling, and minimal energy loss. Christian von Koenigsegg held it like a baby. Engineers everywhere were stunned. Quad-turbo engine. Burns fuel, not the planet. This engine doesn't run on regular gasoline, but on e-fuel, made from captured CO2 and renewable hydrogen, meaning no additional carbon enters the atmosphere. At 1,500 horsepower just from this engine, combined with the electric motor, total output reaches 2,300 horsepower, more than a Bugatti Chiron. No fast charging, no winter battery anxiety. The climax, a hybrid system with a soul. While Tesla struggles with 4,680 batteries, triple motor setups, and sensor arrays to simulate real driving, Koenigsegg simply uses one motor and one engine. And when the car accelerates, it doesn't fake engine sounds. It roars for real. Tesla, at a crossroads, keep racing forward or look back. Tesla's strategy once seemed invincible. Superior software, bigger batteries, mass production. But Koenigsegg now reveals a contrarian path, lighter, cleaner, and emotionally compelling. Tesla can't pivot easily. They can't walk away from billions invested in batteries, production lines, and charging infrastructure. They're trapped by their own success. Meanwhile, Koenigsegg needs just a few engineers, a small factory, and one guiding philosophy. No old rules, no herd mentality, just performance. The final question, not for Elon alone, but the whole auto industry. If a small automaker can create cleaner, stronger, more soulful cars, why is the rest of the industry still forcing us to accept cold, lifeless EVs? In just 24 hours, the US stock market lost over $1 trillion. Not because of war, not due to a financial crisis, but because of an artificial intelligence model from China, DeepSeek AI, a mysterious unicorn. Built for only $5.6 million. DeepSeek AI didn't come from Google. It wasn't developed by OpenAI, and it has nothing to do with Silicon Valley giants. It was created by a little-known lab in China, backed by high-flyer Quant, a hedge fund managing over $8 billion in assets. What's more shocking is its development cost and timeline. Just 2 months, and only $5.6 million. For comparison, OpenAI has spent over $5 billion building and maintaining ChatGPT. Yet DeepSeek delivers performance on par with, and in some tests, superior to, major US models. Capabilities that can't be ignored. DeepSeek isn't just a simple chatbot. It can autonomously build video games from scratch, even in programming languages it was never trained on. It can solve complex college-level math problems using a chain-of-thought approach, breaking down reasoning step by step. More importantly, it explains its entire reasoning process, unlike the black box behavior of many other AIs. Unbelievably low cost. Using OpenAI's GPT-4 API, you pay around $60 per million tokens. Tokens refer to every word and punctuation mark processed by the AI. DeepSeek charges just $2.19 per million tokens for the same workload. That's a massive cost advantage, forcing the industry to rethink its pricing models. And with performance close to GPT-4, even outperforming Meta's Llama and Anthropic's Claude 3.5 in math, coding, and bug detection tasks, Wall Street gets a wake-up call. Following DeepSeek's release, US tech stocks plunged. NVIDIA, the world's leading AI chipmaker, lost $589 billion in market value. The total loss across US tech markets surpassed $1 trillion, marking one of the largest one-day drops in history. For years, the narrative has been, AI is the future, and the US leads that future. But DeepSeek proved that world-class AI can now be built on a shoestring budget, open source versus closed source. DeepSeek chose to go open source. Any developer can download, modify, and deploy it for free. In contrast, models like GPT-4 and Claude remain closed, available only through paid APIs. The debate between open versus closed is no longer academic. For the first time, the open model is not just free, it's also more capable in key areas. Developers are quietly making the switch. Today, countless US startups and independent developers are quietly switching to DeepSeek. Not just for cost savings, but for greater control. Small companies that couldn't afford OpenAI's steep pricing now have a shot at building their own AI-powered products. The next phase, hardware and automation. So far, AI has been about software, processing language, logic, and visuals. But the next phase will be AI embedded in physical machines, robots that learn from real-world data, machines that can build, self-optimize, manage energy systems, and even participate in scientific research. And those who gain the edge in hardware-integrated AI may soon lead not just economies, but also global influence. Just 7 days after a new 25% tariff was imposed, over 5,000 auto workers across the US and Canada were impacted. New car prices are projected to spike up to $3,000, and supply chains, they're falling off the rails. Right after the tariff announcement, it felt like someone hit the off switch on North America's assembly lines. Stellantis, the parent company behind brands like Jeep, Dodge, and Ram, temporarily halted production in the US, Canada, and Mexico. According to Reuters, 900 American workers were put on temporary leave. 4,500 Canadian jobs were affected as the Windsor plant shut down. In Mexico, production paused too, though workers kept getting paid. A signal that this isn't a layoff, just a forced pit stop. Instead of boosting US manufacturing, the tariff led to key facilities going quiet, while costs continue to climb, hour by hour. North America's auto sector is built on cross-border manufacturing. One car can be assembled from over 30,000 parts, with the engine from Mexico, the electronics from Canada, and final assembly in Detroit. It was a golden strategy, low costs, high efficiency. But with a 25% tariff, every single imported part becomes an added brick of cost. The New York Times estimates the added cost per vehicle could range from $2,000 to $4,000. Suddenly, efficiency feels more like a financial migraine. Windsor, once hailed as the auto capital of Canada, is now facing silent streets and shrinking paychecks. According to the Globe and Mail, auto jobs make up 10% of Windsor's workforce, not to mention countless contractors, logistics firms, and part suppliers. And it doesn't stop there. Car dealerships are now running on empty. Where they used to receive 30 to 40 cars per week, some now receive only 5 to 10 units, with wait times stretching to 6 to 8 weeks. Buyers are confused, sellers are out of stock, and the whole industry is hitting the brakes. Hard. CNBC reports, new car prices could rise by $1,500 to $3,000 due to the tariff and shortages. Hot models like the Jeep Compass and Dodge Charger are now seeing market fees added to the sticker. Used cars aren't spared either. According to Kelley Blue Book, used sedan prices are up 2 to 3%, adding another $500 to $700 per vehicle. And with interest rates for auto loans hovering at 7 to 8%, many families are postponing purchases or settling for smaller, less equipped vehicles. One buyer in Illinois put it bluntly, "We walked in looking for a truck and drove home in a used sedan. Maybe not stylish, but at least the wallet survived." Factory Zero, GM's flagship EV plant in Detroit, recently paused operations and put 200 workers on temporary leave. GM claims it's due to lower than expected EV demand, not directly because of the tariff, but disruptions in supply chains clearly played a part. Models like the Hummer EV, Silverado EV, and Escalade IQ are facing delays. R&D is being scaled back. Expansion plans? On hold. Even the green future seems to be stuck in traffic, on a bumpy road paved with global trade shocks. Bringing jobs back to America sounds patriotic, but in practice, it's expensive and complicated. According to CNBC and Reuters, if costs continue rising, companies like Stellantis may shrink operations or shift toward lower-cost regions like Asia or Eastern Europe. In Canada, the auto industry supports around 125,000 direct jobs. If this retreat continues, that number could take a serious hit. So now what? Keep the old car and hope for better days? Take a high-interest loan just to drive what you want? Or settle for a tiny, fuel-efficient model with fewer features? There's no one-size-fits-all answer. But one thing's clear. When prices rise, loans get heavier, and options shrink. The key is no longer in your ignition. It's in the hands of policymakers and automakers. When harvest season ended, what remained on the fields wasn't profit, it was silence. Markets disappeared without warning. Warehouses were full, containers lined up at ports. But no one came to claim them. The collapse without noise, but one that spreads deeper each day. The collapse of agricultural exports. For years, U.S. agriculture has relied on exports as a pillar of survival. But after Beijing imposed tariffs exceeding 125%, U.S. sorghum exports to China dropping from 1.44 million tons to 78,000 tons. Storage remains full. Farms keep harvesting, but buyers are gone. This isn't just a short-term shock. The USDA confirms U.S. agricultural exports to China are at their lowest point. The shift in global supply chains. While the U.S. stands on the sidelines, China has pivoted rapidly. They proactively seek new partners to secure long-term supply. Within a year, soybean imports from Brazil surged by 25%. Argentina also expanded output to meet China's demand. These nations didn't just seize a market opening. They invested in ports, warehousing, and logistics. Fallout for logistics and labor. The Port of Oakland, a key hub for frozen agricultural exports, has fallen into deep congestion. Since the new tariffs were announced, 68 cargo sailings have been canceled without notice. A major hay exporter in Washington laid off 25% of its staff in just 2 weeks. A shipment of 6,400 tons of wood is now stuck without rerouting orders. Another 9,000-ton shipment en route to China may be rejected altogether. Government response and eroding trust. Instead of reopening markets or building new trade channels, the federal response has focused on bailouts. These relief packages are widely publicized but fail to address the root issue. Money cannot reopen ports or revive broken contracts. Major farm associations, including the NFU, ASA, and AFBF, have urged for swift resolutions to trade disputes. Traditional farming regions like Iowa and Kentucky have been forced to scale back operations. They know planting means losses, but not planting brings bankruptcy even faster, a long-term structural crisis. U.S. agriculture was designed to maximize output while depending heavily on exports. But once major markets close, the entire system falters. Domestic food prices have risen modestly over the past year. Soybean, corn, and wheat growers can no longer break even without export contracts. New Deal-era policies once stabilized farm income through supply management, price floors, and strategic reserves. But today, those systems have been replaced with short-term relief programs that lack long-term industrial strategy, a crisis that can no longer be denied. From the heartland to the West Coast ports, America's agricultural system is fracturing. Exports are gone. Markets have shifted. Opportunities to rejoin the global trade map are shrinking by the day. Meanwhile, competitors have completed new supply chains, backed by state support and long-term contracts. They need a comprehensive plan, rebuilding export infrastructure, reigning in corporate dominance, and restoring international trust. Without urgent policy change, what's at stake isn't just a season, but an entire generation of agriculture on the brink of vanishing. In just a few weeks, GM closed 5 factories, cutting 14,000 jobs, and the most vocal reaction came from Donald Trump. Why did an American automotive icon choose such a drastic move? GM's strategic shift and its impact on jobs. General Motors has just announced a groundbreaking restructuring plan. 5 factories will be shut down, 4 in the US and 1 in Canada. 14,000 employees will lose their jobs. This is no longer just a minor adjustment. It's a transformative shift, crucial for the company's survival. GM has decided to exit the internal combustion engine market, pouring $35 billion into electric and autonomous vehicles. They are turning old factories into high-tech production hubs, such as Factory Zero in Detroit and Spring Hill in Tennessee. But electric cars don't require as many workers as gas-powered ones. Automation and simplified production mean fewer jobs. Will the green future come at the cost of thousands of American jobs? Impact on car prices and consumers. Trump responded by imposing a 25% tariff on cars imported from Mexico and Canada. This is particularly significant because 30% of GM's cars sold in the US are assembled in these 2 countries. The result? Car prices could increase by thousands of dollars. An SUV imported from Mexico is no longer affordable as it once was. But that's not all. Trump also wants to eliminate the $7,500 tax credit for electric vehicles. If this happens, electric cars will become more expensive, forcing middle-class consumers to think twice before switching. Meanwhile, GM is still heavily investing in domestic supply chains, such as the $650 million investment in the Thacker Pass lithium project in Nevada, aiming to secure domestic battery material supplies. The problem is, electric car prices may not necessarily decrease, but consumers will certainly pay more. What's concerning is that consumers will bear the costs from both sides: tariffs and the removal of subsidies. For many US households, especially the middle class, owning an electric vehicle will no longer be an economically viable option. GM is speeding up its technological transition, but this pace may outstrip the ability of the general market to adapt. If subsidies are withdrawn while battery prices remain volatile, buyers will have to choose between keeping their old car or taking on debt to purchase a new one. Amid rising living costs, buying a car is becoming more of a burden than a choice. Market reactions and long-term impact. As soon as Trump's tariffs took effect, GM's stock immediately dropped by 6%. The total market value lost billions of dollars. Investors were alarmed. Increased production costs, supply chain disruptions, risk of delays in new electric vehicle launches. While GM wants to accelerate the transition, tariff and policy barriers could slow progress. The situation became even tenser when CEO Mary Barra met Trump at the White House. Trump demanded that jobs be brought back to the US, while Barra presented data, insisting, without global supply chains, electric vehicles won't be competitive. The meeting was described as tense, and no agreement was reached. In the media, public opinion became divided. One side claimed GM was betraying American workers. The other argued Trump was punishing innovation. Meanwhile, in industrial states like Michigan and Ohio, reactions were explosive. Unions criticized GM for chasing profits, while consumers were confused by rising car prices. The market is divided. Some want to preserve jobs, while others believe in innovation. 14,000 American jobs gone. $55 million invested, but not in the USA. When an iconic brand like John Deere packs up and leaves, it raises a simple question. Is the American dream still made in America? In 2024, John Deere, the nearly 200-year-old symbol of American farming, announced a $55 million investment in a new factory in Ramos Arizpe, Mexico. The plant will build skid steer loaders and compact track loaders, the same machines that once symbolized the heartland. Why move? Costs in the US are rising, and wages in Mexico? Up to 70% lower. Meanwhile, Brazil and Argentina, two agricultural giants with over $300 billion in exports, are hungry for equipment. In early 2025, Deere even hinted at expanding operations in Mexico, targeting a Latin market growing 10% per year. This isn't outsourcing. It's a global strategy reset. The 45th president vowed to bring jobs back. But a 25% tariff on vehicles from Mexico and Canada had unintended effects. General Motors closed 5 factories and laid off 14,000 workers. In towns like Lordstown, Ohio, workers like Mike, 20 years on the GM floor, now work night shifts at Amazon. "I'm not angry," he says, "but what's left of this town without the plant?" Today, 30% of GM vehicles sold in the US come from foreign plants. And according to the Center for Automotive Research, those tariffs could add up to $3,000 per vehicle. Now, a new threat: a 200% tariff on John Deere products made outside the US. Sounds tough. But let's be real. Companies don't pay tariffs. Consumers do. GM invested $35 billion in electric vehicles. Models like the Cadillac Lyriq start at $60,000. The Silverado EV, up to 450 miles per charge. And 3 new EV models are coming by late 2025. But here's the catch. EV manufacturing needs 30 to 40% fewer workers than traditional cars. Why? Automation. Robots don't take breaks, don't need health insurance, and don't form unions. So even if production moves back to America, the jobs may not, and it's not just the factories. EVs themselves require less maintenance, fewer parts, fewer repairs. That means fewer mechanics, fewer supply chain jobs, and fewer dealership service techs. The shift to electric isn't just about energy, it's a full system reset. And in this reset, workers aren't just being replaced, they're being left behind. When Deere announced the move to Mexico, stocks barely moved. Investors liked the global shift. Meanwhile, GM shares dropped over 6% as costs, tariffs, and EV risks rattled confidence. Steel prices in the US rose over 20% in 2024. Add tariffs, and prices for cars and equipment keep climbing. Who's stuck in the middle? Farmers, families, everyday Americans, paying more for less. While America First echoes on campaign trails, companies like Deere and GM are redrawing the manufacturing map. And those red dots are drifting far beyond the 50 states.